Good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. Bienvenue. Welcome to the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting for the 7th of June, 2022. Bienvenue à la réunion du Comité Finances et Développement économique pour le 7 juin 2022. This meeting will be held through the electronic participation in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended by Bill 197, the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020. Do we have quorum, Madam Coordinator?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do a quick roll call. Councillor Cloutier.
Présent, Monsieur le Maire.
Councillor Curry. I think I see Councillor Curry there. You're on mute.
My mute is having a problem, okay? I'm here.
Councillor Derouz.
Here, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Moffat. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Any declarations of interest? Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbal, special meeting 37 April 29th. Confidential minutes 37 April 29th. Minutes 38 May 3rd. Special meeting May 6th. On those minutes, carried. We'll go through the consent agenda now. First item of business, Kanata North Business Association update. We'll come back to that. There's a presentation. Next, under Community and Social Services, Anti-Racism Strategy, Stratégie de lutte contre le racisme. We'll come back to that. For that item, we have translation in English, French, and Arabic. Finance Services, Service des Finances, Finance Lease Agreement 2021. Received. Item 4, 2022 Tax and Operating Capital Budget Q1 status.
Hold, please.
Is it a quick question, Councillor?
I have a question on the endowment fund and on the prudent investor, which is the next item. Those are the only two.
Okay, you want to ask it now?
Sure. Thanks very much, Mayor. So the endowment fund piece associated with this, that's more on the prudent investor side. I understand that. Excuse me. I'm mixing issues here. The first one I wanted to discuss is the $1 million that we had allocated as part of the climate change budget. And I believe that's in this section. That was to establish a fund that could be a revolving fund. And I just wanted to ask staff about the establishment of that fund. It's a one-time fund this time around, but I wanted to make sure that what the purpose of that $1 million will be in terms of reinvesting savings from energy efficiency measures back into climate change implementation, if that's where we've landed.
Councillor, sorry, I thought this was going to be a quick item. We'll come back to it then. We'll go
Great.
on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next is investments, endowment fund, and other treasury activities.
Just hold that one. Thanks.
Capital adjustments and closing a project, city tax and rate supported. Carried.
Carried.
Innovative client services, a 2021 procurement year in review. Received.
Received.
Item 8, 2022 City of Ottawa Municipal Accessibility Plan. We'll come back to that. We have a presentation. Planning, real estate and economic development, acquisition of Nance Woods through land exchange. Carried.
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 To Councillor Kitts for your work on that. Item 10, Brownfield grant application, 1098 Ogilvie Road and 1178 Cummings Avenue in Beacon Hill, Searville. Carried.
Carried.
Item 2 is, item 11, Brownfield grant application, 18 Hamilton Avenue North in Kitchissippi Ward. Carried.
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 Item 12, Brownfield grant application 1335 and 1339 Bank Street in Alta Vista. Carried.
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 Information previously distributed. Use of delegated authority by Revenue Services. Received. No, we have one inquiry we'll come to at the end, and no notices of motion. So we'll go back to where we have guests from outside. Our first item is Kanata North Business Association update, growth and opportunity in Canada's largest tech hub. And we have a presentation by Jamie Petton, President and CEO of the association, Amy McLeod, Chair, and Sir Terry Matthews, Chair of Wesley Clover International. So we'll welcome those guests. Does staff wish to do any pre-announcement, or is this, we're going to leave this up to Jamie, I guess? I see Jamie there. Hello, Jamie. How are you?
Hi, Mayor Watson. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I see Amy, and where is Terry? Is Terry on the line?
I think I'm on the line.
There you are. That voice is very distinct. Hi, Terry. I don't see you, but I hear you. So welcome. Oh, now I see you. There you are. You have a bigger office than I do, Terry. Very jealous. So we have 15 minutes in presentations, and we'll open it up to questions. So 5 minutes apiece. So Jamie, are you going to begin, or is Amy?
Yeah, so I'll kick us off and then we'll follow with some comments and contributions from our chair, Amy McLeod, and Mr. Matthews as well. So first, Mayor, I'd like to thank you, as well as Deputy Mayor Dudas and our City Councillor Kathy Curry, as well as this Joint Finance and Economic Development Committee, for offering this opportunity to present today. My name is Jamie Petton, and I have met some of you before. If I have not, I am the President and CEO of the Kanata North Business Association, and I have the privilege and honor of being the voice for the Kanata North Technology Park. The KNBA has been actively consulting with our membership and ownership base over the course of the last several years in identifying opportunities for inputs into the official plan. And as a part of this consultation process, we've been consolidating those inputs and identifying the forces that will shape Kanata North today and in the future. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge Stephen Willis, Don Herwire, and city staff who contributed to this consultation process in collaboration with the Technology Park. It was an honor to really work together with this team to identify this opportunity of designating the Kanata North Tech Park as a special economic district in the next official plan. So now I'd like to walk you through why Kanata North is an economic and innovation engine for Ottawa, Ontario, and Canada, and why this is critically important to the city in this next chapter. And I'll just ask if we can have the slides showing. And we will move to the next slide. So up on the screen, many of you will be familiar with this map. You will see a map of Kanata North, which is home to Canada's largest tech park. From this map, we have many global brands. You'll see over 543 technology companies and those that support the ecosystem represented. This is a snapshot in time, but it does show the diversity of our tech ecosystem, reflecting large multinationals and small medium enterprises all the way through to startups. To the next slide, please. Established in 1978, Kanata North is an evolving and balanced ecosystem of old and new tech with a long legacy in telecommunications. And although this remains our largest subsector, with pioneering and large multinationals such as Ericsson, Mitel, and Nokia in the park, other subsectors have emerged, including software and cloud services, clean tech, and life sciences, all growing faster than ever before. Also recognized in Kanata North, we are a world-class applications leader in the global application economy. Kanata North is a leader in connected and autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and the Internet of Things. Next slide, please. Anchored by Kanata North-based BlackBerry QNX, Ottawa is Canada's connected and autonomous vehicles capital and home to more than 90 startups, corporations, and post-secondary institutions that are contributing to CAVs of the future. The Tech Park is home to the city's connected and autonomous vehicles public test track, where Ottawa was the first Canadian city to launch testing on an on-street autonomous vehicle with live City of Ottawa infrastructure. The Kanata North Tech Park is the perfect smart cities living lab. Next slide, please. Some of you might be familiar with this data. As released in our 2018 Economic Impact Assessment report, Kanata North provides a significant and fast-growing economic and employment impact to Ottawa, Ontario, and Canada. Up 66%, the companies in the park contribute 13 billion to GDP and generate over 33,000 jobs. Next slide, please. The recent opening of the University of Ottawa and Carleton University's Kanata North campuses also support a successful partnership and close integration of universities in the technology park, offering talent, research, and training to accelerate the ability of our companies to innovate and flourish. Talent attraction and retention couldn't be in higher demand at this time in the tech park. And there are select few technology parks around the world who have taken this model of integrating academia directly within the industry ecosystem. Next slide, please. So as shared, Kanata North is a vital engine driving Ottawa's economic development. The companies of the tech park contribute 170 million in returns to the city annually. And all of the above demonstrate that there's a critical need for planning policies that can ensure the continued momentum of employment and prosperity in the park and for those that are employed across the city. Next slide, please. But it is not all good news. The impact of COVID-19 across our technology hub can't be understated. Small businesses, retailers, restaurant owners, and service providers are still struggling to survive. Employees and their employers are doing their best to balance the constant change and uncertainty. And finally, our commercial property owners are concerned, will my tenants return? In a recent survey conducted by KRP, they have identified that a large majority of tenants see between 25 and 70% of their tenants returning to the workplace, whether that's in a hybrid capacity or a full-time capacity. But 60% of them have yet to develop their back to work plans. So it's ever more important that together as a community, as an ecosystem, and as a city, we support them in guiding that return to the workplace, return to the community as we emerge from COVID. So what's next? Next slide, please. Together, we believe we can transform the technology park from a 1970s industrial business park to a complete and connected living lab community with mixed uses, next generation technology solutions, and a vibrant culture of collaboration across the tech park. What will distinguish this district from the office park of today? A series of compact nodes that support the critical mass of live, work, play, learn, and innovate activities by promoting creative coalitions of people that power new ideas. Next slide, please. The Kanata North Special Economic District will be linked by cutting-edge mobility, as well as a rich public realm and network of lively, walkable, and public spaces. As a special economic district, Kanata North will benefit from regulatory flexibility to enable the district to adapt to rapidly changing technologies and business models. In contrast to the office park of today, the Kanata North Special Economic District will encourage a broader range of uses, including a diverse range of housing, broader mix of retail, food, arts, culture, breweries, and similar uses that bring life to our streets and promote community collaboration. Next slide, please. A grand vision, such as what was conceived for the Woven City in Japan, will inspire a shared path forward in Kanata North's endeavor to be a world-class destination for innovation and technology. The future vision, recommended as a next phase of work through an inclusive process, will be to establish Kanata North as a connected innovation community and a living lab. This community of the future will attract and retain talent from around the globe and provide significant long-term economic benefits to Ottawa, Ontario, and of course, Canada. Next slide, please. Following a highly successful launch of Hub 350, the near term presents opportunities to continue to build the profile and facilitate continued collaboration amongst our stakeholders here in the park and our anchor partners of Hub 350. TELUS, RBC, Salesforce, and world-leading post-secondary institutions such as the University of Ottawa, Carleton, Algonquin, and Queen's have all selected the technology park as a place to collaborate with our member companies. Hub 350 will serve as that physical gateway to Canada's largest tech hub, where talent can explore opportunities to connect and collaborate. Next slide, please. At the heart of Hub 350 is our TELUS 5G Innovation Zone. As you're going to hear from Mr. Matthews, 5G represents one of the most significant new advances in communications technologies to date. In the short term, Hub 350 will accelerate customer adoption and real-world deployment of next-generation tech solutions on live city streets in the park. The association will place a continued focus on reinforcing Ottawa as Canada's connected autonomous vehicle capital through continued collaboration with our partners at Invest Ottawa and Area X.O. Together, KNBA are excited to cooperate and operate this community-driven office space. But in the long term, we're bracing for a continued increase in competition for labor, a need to create a people and place hub with a dispersed workforce, and ongoing ramifications and impacts of COVID-19. As such, we are continuing as an organization and as a community to focus on supporting our post-secondary institutions in connecting their talent to experiential learning opportunities here in the park. We're continuing to focus on developing Kanata North as that complete and connected living lab community, and on integrating all infrastructure and technology related to smart cities in this future mixed-use living lab environment. Next slide, please. In consideration of the opportunities that the new official plan present for Kanata North, we'd like to express our need for further investment in infrastructure and development, specifically to further unleash the potential for the tech park over the next 20 years. Our greatest challenge today, and it will be moving forward, is in inadequate infrastructure to support our current and future levels of growth. Traffic and transit challenges continue to impede that attraction and retention of world-class talent. And there's an urgent need to implement solutions that will alleviate future congestion and solve the transportation needs of our 33,000 person workforce here in the park. Next slide, please. So our ask today is for you to prioritize LRT Phase 3 and BRT in the City of Ottawa's next transportation master plan. With Nokia's recent announcement of over 2,800 residential units in the park, this infrastructure investment is now just a necessary and critical need in order to support the continued momentum in the park. Nokia's plans are really just the beginning, as I've shared today, of this forthcoming transformation across the Kanata North Tech Park. We're at a critical point in time where we can and will, if we work together, determine the future potential for growth and economic prosperity in Canada's largest tech hub. And with that, as I mentioned, I'm joined today by our chair, Amy McLeod, as well as chairman of West Clover International, Sir Terry Matthews. Both are going to provide some supporting comments with the perspective of talent attraction and retention needs here in the park and that next 5G wave. So I'll pass it over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Mayor Watson and members of council for spending some time with us this morning to think and talk about Kanata North, where we are today and where we want to go in the future. I do want to acknowledge the incredible leadership of Jamie Petton. She is a classic example of a young tech executive that grew up in the park, that has a vision bigger than anything that I could have come up with in my own head, and perhaps even Mr. Matthews, and is leading the charge to make sure that we keep what we have in Kanata North, which is a very important tech ecosystem and economic contributor to Ottawa and to Canada, and also to make sure that we're competitive globally, which is increasingly where the tech market is. I also want to acknowledge the contributions of Councillor Curry, who serves on our board and is a local champion for Kanata North. And on a personal level, I want to acknowledge all of the folks on the call who helped steer us through that tragic power outage earlier in May. I am a long resident of Stittsville, and Councillor Gower, your communications to keep us informed and on top of things and to know where things were leading was invaluable. So just wanted to take an opportunity in front of the audience to say thank you for that. Jamie has asked me to speak specifically about talent acquisition and retention in the park. I am, in addition to the chair of Kanata North, I am the vice president of corporate communications for MDA. MDA is Canada's premier space company, well known for as the builder of the Canada Arm and the RadarSat family of Earth observation satellites that are heavily used by the government of Canada and others. Intensely high-tech developments happening in Kanata North that support a global industry that is increasingly and rapidly expanding. Our largest challenge as a business, and I believe reflective of most of the member companies in Kanata North, is talent. It is the raw resource that powers our industries. It drives all of that economic benefit that Jamie profiled at the beginning of her talk. And it is the biggest risk we have to not only maintaining what we've got, but continuing to be able to compete globally. Kanata North, as some of you were there, Mayor Watson was gracious enough to join us at TechNeta in April. Largest tech recruiting event in Ottawa for certain, I would say one of the largest in Ontario and in Canada. 2,400 job seekers, people looking for jobs, 1,400 open positions in Kanata North, in addition to the 33,000 that Jamie already talked about. We fight every single day to hire those people. My own company in 2021, the year just ended, hired 670 new staff. We will not grow or succeed without them. To date this year, it's January 1st or shortly after, we've hired another 400. That is not an anomaly to my company. That is a reflection of the intense shift to tech-intensive business and the fact that almost every business, including council, as I sit here and I look at the screen today, has tech requirements. We're all competing. We're not competing just in Ottawa. We're competing in Ontario, in Canada. We go to France, we go to Europe, we go to economies that have highly educated skills that we need to recruit and bring to Canada. It is a hand-to-hand combat fight every day for talent. And the infrastructure plan that Jamie has presented is so critical for us to be able to attract that talent, to create an environment where we can have people who can root in one company and spend the next 30 years having a fantastic world-class tech experience and career. That's an equally important consideration as we think about what drives the tech ecosystem. And I wanted to make sure that we brought that to bear in this conversation as well. With that, and just recognizing time, I would turn it over to Sir Terry to talk a little bit about the next wave of technology that is impacting the park and the global tech infrastructure community and ecosystem, 5G. Terry, you're on mute.
Hey, it's a pleasure to say hi to everyone here. This is
Terry,
kind
can you
of
speak up a little
special
bit?
week. Sorry?
Can you speak up a little bit or get the mic closer to
Oh,
you?
I'm sorry. I can get a little closer. You can't hear me properly?
Yeah, no, that's better.
Maybe I'll just crank it up a little bit. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is a kind of special week. I'm not able to do that from here. In any event, it's kind of a special week. And one of the reasons is because this is 50 years today. Can you hear that or not?
I'm finding it's quite weak.
All right, I can turn that up a little bit more.
Yeah, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, and just maybe project a little louder.
Oh, okay, I'll do that as well. In any event, thank you so much for listening today. I very much appreciate the opportunity for talking to people. This is a funny sort of day, which is just by chance. Can you hear me, Mayor? Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
it's actually 50 years this week since I borrowed $3,000 from TD Bank and took half of it and started up my job. That's this week. I started the company up at 39 Leacock Way. Now, today it's not called Leacock Way, but nevertheless, that little building there is where I started up Mitel, and Mike Copeland joined me, and boom, up the company came because we caught what I call a tech wave. Everybody wanted to dial with push button dialing, DTMF, up, 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 and get away from rotary dial. Boom. We introduced a product after 6 months of working literally around the clock with very young people that came out of Carleton, Ottawa U. And if you can hear me properly, I hope you can, because I didn't have enough money to pay them. So we gave them shares. And 6 months later, we came out with a product, which I keep around here. And you'll say, Terry, why are you showing me this little product? Well, that's because I laid it out myself. And you'll say, well, what the hell has that got to do with this discussion? Because after 6 months, we made this product that was 30 times smaller than anybody else's product. And we sold it for 1/10 of the price. And very quickly, we controlled the global market, which kept growing for about 10 years. And I could go down that track and tell you a lot about it. And then we introduced another product, CMOS integrated circuits. Look at that. We sold these all over the planet. Now that is something. And why am I showing you that? I'm showing you that because timing in life is almost everything. You must get your timing right. You must get the product right. You must go global. And I'm very lucky in life to have caught waves. So some of you will not be aware of this. I'll bring it up close because I've created, and this is not trying to boast, I'm happy to send you this list. There's about 200 companies there. And here's the important thing for you to know. They're all tech companies and there are no bankruptcies. And some of the companies grew to be very big, in particular in the Ottawa area. So you look at Mitel, it grew to be $3 billion. You look at Newbridge, it grew to be $10.7 billion. I can give you a long list, but there are 3 companies that were well over $1 billion and many at hundreds of millions. It's a funny thing in life. If you've done something once, it's much easier the second time. I think after about 10 times, I really knew what to do. So if you take a look at Kanata North, you look at this part of Ottawa, it's now the biggest tech park in Canada. And not only that, it's a magnet. What do I mean a magnet? There are people from the UK, people from France, people from the Middle East that want to come here. People who are well educated that say, I want to go to Ottawa. We've created a little bit of a magnet to attract the right people. The universities, partly because of Nortel's background, Mitel background, Newbridge background in particular, the things which are taught in Carleton, Ottawa U, Algonquin, boom, they're right on target. So I work with these institutions all the time because you can't live without having a next generation that's well educated and can join in. What's the good news? The good news is there's well over 500 tech companies. The good news is most of them are growing. And the good news for us is the timing. I talked about timing. So what do I mean by timing? There's another wave coming, which is commonly called 5G. If you take a look at TELUS, the number 3 service provider in Canada, they will invest about $50 billion in the next 10 years. That didn't include Bell Canada, didn't include Rogers, companies I know really well. It didn't include BT, it didn't include Verizon and AT&T. What an incredible wave of new technology required around the world. And for whatever reason, Ottawa's got some of the most important companies in that wave. So what am I trying to say here is if we get it right, in the next 10 years, you will see Ottawa double in this next generation of technology, which we simply call sometimes 5G, sometimes we call it IoT, Internet of Things. I'm actually working now with the federal government and the provincial government to bring a summit together in Ottawa to talk about this next generation. Because lots of people talk about it, but they don't understand the bits and the bytes. They don't understand the in-depth reason that Ottawa's where much of this global growth, or much of it, will actually come from here. I'd really like an opportunity to meet everybody online here and give them much more in-depth coverage. I run a thing every month called Tech Tuesday, first Tuesday of every month. I run a thing called Exec Tuesday, which is the C-level people, and that's at Hub 350. That's every month. Not hard to know what date. It's the first Tuesday of every month, second Tuesday of every month. So what's my message to you? Please understand this is global. Please understand we actually have a hub here, which is one of the best on the planet, and it's a magnet. So I'm happy to answer any questions. So Mayor, thank you for working with us and organizing this today. I happen to be an industrialist. I'm a technologist. My entire career has been in engineering and wireless. And that's the next generation of communications. And it is global, and it's the biggest change that the planet has ever seen in communications. You don't have to dig up roads. You don't have to rip out ceilings and walls because it's wireless. Happy to answer any question you like.
Right.
I have the sensitivity, Mayor, of a brick.
All right. Listen, thank you, Terry and Amy and Jamie. And I just want to add one thing that Amy said, or Terry actually said, the job fair, the Technata. I had the opportunity to tour it with Councillor Curry, and boy, it was impressive. This was the first time we were able to get together because the previous ones obviously were virtual because of COVID. But just the number of companies, new companies that are starting up, the number of people looking for work, and the number of jobs available was really very well organized. And I commend Jamie and her whole team, her small but mighty team, built on the great work that our former colleague Jenna Suds did. And our first questioner is Jenna's successor, our new councillor, Kathy Curry. Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Terry. I went to one of the Tech Tuesdays early on, and really I thank Jenna for letting me know all that was going on and what I needed to learn. And I would say that the first thought I had was how important it is for everyone to understand what's going on in the tech park, including me, as I'm still just learning. Everything we do as a city, everything we try to do to make Ottawa the best city it can be, whether it's roads and traffic lights or parks or any of the water services we have, we try to make this the best city it can be. And you all created an official plan that tries to achieve 15-minute neighborhoods, tries to achieve a lovely place to live for everyone in this city. And it struck me that everyone, I think, would benefit from understanding every part of the role that the tech park plays. If any of you have ever been to Boston, I listened to a presentation by Dana Brown from Carleton, and Kendall Square at MIT is exactly where we want to be. So if you ever saw Kendall Square many years ago and now you see it now, you can sort of see what we might get in the future. But so important for us all to understand the tech park's role and how much we want to attract people to the tech park. Kanata North is a very exciting place, but everything that happens there impacts everyone in the city, I think. I would invite you all to the public information night tonight about Nokia and what Nokia's plans. So that's at 6 o'clock. So you could listen straight from Nokia what's happening there. And just so that a summary of this is that the live, work, play, learn concept, to have it all in one place, is I think the best summary of what we're trying to do in the tech park. But I really appreciate everyone helping me get up to speed, and I would encourage you all to go to the Tech Tuesdays. because they're a wonderful opportunity to learn what's really going on and what each company is doing. But thanks so much, Terry and Jamie and Amy, for coming today. I'm sure there are lots of questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Councillor Gower from Stittsville, and Glenn had a great community volunteer celebration yesterday. I had the honor of attending. So thank you for highlighting some great work in your community. And you're just down the road from the tech park, Glenn.
That's right. And thank you, Mayor, for coming out to Stittsville last night. In Stittsville, especially in the new communities, the new homes that are being built, when I visit residents there, it does seem like every second or third family is here because they are working in Kanata North, working in technology. So definitely we see the impact in the West End that the technology park and the jobs, the impact on the growth in our community here. So thank you for your presentations. What I wanted to ask is from a municipal perspective, I mean, there's all sorts of projects, all sorts of initiatives, all sorts of aspects of the municipality that can affect the healthy growth and allow us to support a district like Kanata North. If we had to focus on one thing as a municipality, what is the greatest barrier or roadblock to growth that we should be focusing on as a council over the next 4 or 5 years?
Glenn, that's not difficult to answer because some of the biggest companies, they have a global mandate with green space. Now, because I have in Kanata North, starting with Mitel and then going through Newbridge, and you may recall that I started up lots of affiliated companies. So Newbridge, as an example, had about 100 associated companies, 50 of which I started up. Because I always realized that a young company, if they have ownership and so on, sometimes they work 7 days a week because they have ownership, they want to grow it, and it's not R&D income on the bigger company. So my argument always is you should be so lucky that a company wants to work with you, spend their time and money on research and development, and it isn't your income statement. So if you guide them, that becomes added value to go after the global market. Now that's worked very well for me. So now it's been in this part of Ottawa like a magnet. So you get companies like Sienna. Now Sienna is a big company in the world of fiber optics. Where did the technology come from? It was actually a Newbridge startup called Cambrian, which was acquired by Nortel. I wouldn't personally have sold it, but nevertheless, there was such an offer, the shareholders wanted to sell it. And so it was sold to Nortel. Nortel went bankrupt, Sienna bought it. It's the basis of their metropolitan area optical network business, which is global. And it's big. If you look at what used to be the Newbridge headquarters, that's now the headquarters of Nokia, a fairly large global company. That's the headquarters of the optical business for Nokia, which is very global. So I could go down a long, long list. For instance, some of you may know the name Solace. You might say, what the hell are you talking about? Well, it's a funny name. So you use your fingers. Sol is sun. Turn your hand and ace is first. First sunshine on the network. So you'll say, like, why am I bringing this up? The company does just over $100 million a year US right now, but growing very fast, probably about 30-40% a year growth in revenues. They are the basis of almost every credit card. If you use a credit card, all the messaging to get the data moving around, it's Solace. 11 of the world's top 12 banks. Almost every other bank, as an example. Partnered with Bosch, partnered with Boomi, part of Dell, and so on. Like, these things are manifesting itself into high growth parts of next generation. Now, it'll be very hard for you to understand this layer of messaging unless you're technical, because you would be more aware of the application level, which is higher, or down at the level of the copper wires and the optical networks and the 5G wireless. But every time you lift up a layer and you get to the application, the value goes up. So there are so many companies, QNX. I almost don't care what car you drive, 80% of all vehicles, trucks, cars, they all use QNX operating system. It's embedded. So the number of companies that are new working with QNX. But to do these things, you have to be into it every day, which I am. This is my business. I doubt if there's many people within this committee that I've ever met. And the reason is because I meet more with people from Germany and France and the UK and the US and Mexico and South America, because that's the global business I'm in. Now, I still believe we should get together and we should talk a little bit more in detail as to what this part of Ottawa represents, at least in the next 10 to 20 years, as the world goes through this incredible change of wireless connectivity, not wired, and not anything other than, oh, it's wireless, you can't see it. You don't have to dig up roads. And this is global.
So Terry.
Trillions of dollars.
Terry.
Yeah.
I was just thinking maybe because we have other items on the agenda and we appreciate your insights. I always feel like I've left a master class in technology when I speak with you because you're so well versed, obviously, and so successful. I would suggest that we get Councillor Curry, along with her West End colleagues, Councillors Gower and Hubley and El Shantiri, to coordinate us, as many of us that can, to go out to one of the Tech Tuesdays. I think, I've been to a couple of them. I find them quite fascinating. You get to meet some people who are doing some amazing things. So maybe, Kathy, you can deal with your West End colleagues, because it's a team effort, and organize, a time when we can go out for one of the Tech Tuesdays.
Mayor, I recommend we do something different and do a special. If you come to Tech Tuesday, you get a general top down. You don't get something specific. So if it's all right with you, I'll work with you on a date and time.
Okay.
And I will address the entire group, because this is very much an important thing for the city.
No, I agree. And we're very proud of the tech park. Eli's got his hand up, and then I think we're going to have to go on to our next item where some people are waiting for us in the queue. So Councillor El Shantiri.
I don't have a question. I just have a thank you for Jamie, Amy, and Mr. Matthew, because I did meet in person with Terry, and I have to tell you, it's a great an hour you spend with Terry talking about this stuff. An hour is not going to justify it, but at least book yourself for over an hour, and it's very valuable information we'll get from him. So I want to thank all the three presenters for coming up this morning. Keep up the good work, Jamie. So I don't have questions. Just thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thanks, Eli. So Jamie and Amy and Terry, thank you very much. One of the things I've tried to do is this is finance and economic development, and we need to hear from our business leaders who contribute greatly in terms of job creation and taxes and so on, and quality of life in our city. So thank you all very much, and we'll move on to our next item with a presentation. So we have the anti-racism strategy. Today, colleagues, we're going to receive an overview of the City of Ottawa's proposed anti-racism strategy for our consideration. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Councillor King for his guidance as the Council Liaison for Anti-Racism and Ethnocultural Relations initiatives, and his role for bringing the establishment of the Secretariat to Council. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this important work and lending your knowledge, expertise, and experience to confronting anti-racism confronting racism rather in the City of Ottawa. Council established the creation of the Secretariat to build an anti-racist approach into the way our city government develops policies, makes decisions, evaluates programs, and measures outcome. Over the past 18 months, the Secretariat has worked diligently to engage staff residents, and community stakeholders in our city to develop an anti-racism strategy with concrete actions that respond to the diversity of needs in our community. And this has been particularly challenging because a lot of these consultations, of course, have had to be done online and not in person, which makes it more formal and I think not as effective, because you want to be able to meet people personally. So we also lived in a period of renewed awareness. Over the past 2 years, we've seen an increase in violence against racialized peoples and racial unrest across the globe. Ottawa has not been immune to this occurrence, with an increase of extremist views and racist symbols on public display in our city earlier this year. The City of Ottawa, of course, condemns all forms of racism. However, words are not enough, and I acknowledge that there is work to be done to address the issues, and the strategy we are being asked to consider establishes a foundation to creating a safe and more inclusive city. Municipal government plays a role in identifying and challenging systemic racism, and the work of the Anti-Racism Secretary is one step towards our commitment to breaking down systemic barriers to ensure full participation of all residents of Ottawa. I've had the opportunity to attend several of the City of Ottawa's anti-racism community advisory table meetings and hear firsthand the results, experiences, and community perspectives of how systemic racism permeates throughout all of our society. The strategy development engaged more than 1,000 residents and will continue to engage residents through its implementation. These meetings were an important listening opportunity to receive the priorities and concerns of the community. And I want to thank the voices of Indigenous, Black, and racialized communities who have courageously and generously contributed their time, expertise, and experience to address these important issues. I believe that the strategy that will be presented today aligns with and builds on existing council-approved equity work, including the Corporate Diversity and Inclusion Plan, and establishes another action plan for anti-racism work in the city. Implementing the actions in the strategy will help ensure racialized communities in our city have equitable access to city programs, services, resources, and opportunities to realize their full potential. The city remains committed to developing and delivering programs and services to meet the diverse needs of the municipality and to grow an equitable and inclusive workforce that is representative of our community. And now I'll pass it over to our city manager, Steve Kanalakis, for some opening remarks and introduce his staff. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor Watson. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased today that we're here and tabling the City of Ottawa's first anti-racism strategy this morning. A significant amount of work has gone into this strategy, and I want to thank Suzanne Obiora and her team in the Gender, Race, Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development branch for their hard work and dedication. We're so fortunate to have Suzanne and her team. We were blessed to be able to find her and get her to agree to work with us, and she's done remarkable work since she's arrived and made incredible progress. I also want to thank Mayor Watson and Councillor Wilson King, our council liaison for anti-racism and ethnocultural relations initiatives, for their outstanding support. Councillor King was an incredible leader in pushing us and moving this forward, and I hope he's proud today of the progress that we've made as an organization. So thank you, Councillor King. And I have to thank, and I want to thank Donna Gray, our General Manager of Community and Social Services, for her vision and leadership. She stands on the shoulders of key leaders in our organization that came before: Valerie Turner, who had the file before, and Liz Marlin in Human Resources. And Donna was assigned this accountability on behalf of the senior leadership team. And in a remarkably short period of time, she established the new Gender and Race, Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development branch, recruited Suzanne, set up an entire team, and pushed forward the development of this strategy, and had an incredible vision for our organization. So I feel good because I made the right choice in assigning it to Donna, on top of all the other work she has, and she's done a remarkable job and bringing her vision to life. So thank you, Donna. And as Mayor Watson mentioned, I agree that as a municipality, the City of Ottawa has a prominent role in challenging racism, and our anti-racism strategy is a critical piece of this work that'll help us move towards this goal. As an organization, we're responsible for ensuring that our residents have equal access to city programs, services, resources, and opportunities to realize their full potential. And this strategy represents our commitment to developing and delivering programs and services that are responsive to the diverse needs of our community and to cultivating an equitable and inclusive workforce. Our work has already begun, and a good example of this is the recent work of public health and our human resources team during COVID-19 pandemic, which disproportionately affected Indigenous, Black, and racialized communities in our city. We saw that, and I saw that firsthand. And staff put significant emphasis on hiring that was reflective of the diversity in our community. They ensured that information was available in multiple languages and targeted engagement, outreach, and support through multiple mediums and platforms for our community. And this is a great example of how intentional efforts to address systemic barriers can result in successful outcomes and positive change. The anti-racism strategy looks to build on these successes and advance this work across the corporation. The strategy introduces intersectional, trauma-focused, and systems-wide approach to anti-racism that will be integrated into all of our business plans. It will inform how the city develops policy, how we make decisions, how we allocate resources, how we engage community, how we communicate to the people of Ottawa, how we evaluate our programs, how we receive and resolve complaints, how we monitor and report on our progress, and measure outcomes of the strategy. We are completely committed to this as a senior leadership team, as an organization. It's also important to note that our senior leadership team is committed to speaking out against racism, demonstrating allyship, and ensuring the behaviors of servant leadership, which is such a central theme in terms of the behaviors I'm expecting our leaders in this organization, that ensuring the behaviors of servant leadership include actions to advance the racial equity in the workplace. Engaging directly with our employees was another critical component in the development of this strategy. And we heard things that we don't like to hear. We heard through our staff consultations that the city has some issues with racialized staff have issues, but the city can be a leader in addressing systemic racism within the corporation, and that all employees at all levels need to be ready to support and engage this work. And internally, as I said, we have work to do. Our staff told us they have experienced instances of racism in the workplace. They feel the burden of identifying and addressing racism when it happens, all of which takes a toll on their mental health and their ability to be their best at work. And we take this seriously, and it's troubling when I hear these types of stories in our workplace. We're unfortunately a reflection of our broader community with 17,000 employees. We're a microcosm of that. And it's unfortunate that we have to hear these things, but it's fortunate that we're taking steps to address them. We heard that management and non-racialized staff don't always feel they have the knowledge, skills, or tools to address racism or safely engage in these conversations. We need to increase awareness among our staff through things like training, education, increasing representation in leadership positions, and have clear processes for naming and addressing racism in the workplace. We are committed to taking action, and our staff are seeking leadership and allies to promote and pursue anti-racism work to ensure the safety of Indigenous, Black, and racialized staff. Again, I want to reiterate that the senior leadership team is committed to this strategy. We will actively demonstrate and model the city's commitment to anti-racism. We will show strength and leadership in prioritizing these actions and hold one another accountable to the work that is required to implement this plan. I am deeply personally committed to this plan and moving this forward across this organization. I now like to turn it over to Suzanne, who's our Director of Gender, Race, Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development, who will go over the strategy in more detail. Thank you for listening to my opening comments, Mr. Mayor.
Great, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of committee, and Mr. Kanalakis for your opening remarks. We do have a presentation if we can just bring that up. 1 year ago to this day, almost, my team and I presented an update on the work of the Anti-Racism Secretariat following our first phase of engagement. Et après ainsi 18 mois de travail,
and after 18 months of work, it's a great honor and privilege for me and my team to present to you the first anti-racism strategy to the committee.
I'd like to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory and is a gathering place for the culturally rich and diverse communities of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. and I believe it is our sacred duty to honor this land and live on it with gratitude and respect. And as we speak about anti-racism work, we must do so in recognition of the sacrifices and experiences of historical and ongoing racial and colonial oppression experienced by Indigenous peoples that take place on this land. Et pour honorer nos engagements en faveur de la
To
réconciliation.
honor our commitments for reconciliation, we must continue to listen, to learn, and to heal so that we can move forward.
To present today, while elements of this strategy will address systemic barriers impacting Indigenous, Black, and other racialized residents in Ottawa. A proposed action item of this strategy is to work in collaboration with the newly formed Indigenous Relations branch within my service area to engage with Indigenous service leaders, community leaders, elders, and youth whose voices will shape an Indigenous-focused anti-racism strategy and build on the work currently being done in Ottawa, in the Ottawa Indigenous community, such as the Indigenous Specific Racism and Discrimination Report released earlier a few weeks ago by Wabano Health Center in partnership with the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition. Next slide, please. In the past 2 years, we witnessed significant systemic inequities at the intersection of race and social class, amplified through the COVID-19 pandemic. Race-based data collection by Ottawa Public Health early in the pandemic showed that racialized residents in Ottawa made up 63% of COVID cases, while representing 29% of the Ottawa population. In comparison, white residents, who made up 71% of the population, had 33% of the total cases. We saw COVID disproportionately impact Black and racialized communities. In the past 2 years, we also saw the discovery of unmarked graves at residential schools across the country. We saw a series of social justice movements for Black lives, anti-Asian racism, and Islamophobia. And what we saw was systemic racism exposed and on full display in employment, housing, food security, technology, education, access to information, access to healthcare, and more. For decades, racial inequities have been documented for nearly every economic, social, health, and political outcome, and that was validated 2 years ago. It is race, and more specifically racism, and not class, that is the strongest predictor of all life outcomes. According to the 2016 Canadian Census, 26% of Ottawa residents identified as racialized, an increase from 20% in 2006. And it is estimated that by 2031, 1/3 of our population will be racialized. Here lies great opportunity. For our city to reach its full potential, all individuals, regardless of race, must have equal rights and equitable opportunities to thrive and prosper. And the strategy being proposed today seeks to accomplish just that. It provides a roadmap to achieve racial equity through a coordinated, trauma-informed, systems-wide approach to ensure that the people of Ottawa, irrespective of their racial identities, have equitable access to city programs, services, resources, and opportunities. And it takes an inward look at the workplace culture in response to the experiences of Indigenous, Black, and racialized staff within the city. Bien que cette stratégie propose une approche.
Although the strategy is proposing a way to fight against racism, it is a starting point to establish the basis of the anti-racism work of the city.
Historical and ongoing impacts of colonialism experienced by Indigenous communities. And second, in recognition of Canada's history of enslavement, racial segregation, and systemic oppression against the Black community, producing a form of racism so deeply entrenched in our institution and practices, and often in ways that have become invisible, yet continue to have a harmful effect on Black populations across Canada. In July of 2020, the Social Planning Council of Ottawa published a summary report of Ottawa's Black community in comparison with the general population, highlighting higher rates of poverty, inequitable employment outcomes, housing disparities, despite comparable or in some instances higher levels of educational attainment in comparison to the total Ottawa top population. Community members and city employees have called on the city to name anti-Black racism as part of this strategy and to set specific targets for members within the Black community. As such, we propose explicitly applying monitoring and evaluation metrics against the impacts and outcomes of this proposed strategy in Black communities. Next slide, please. Dr. Robert Livingston describes conversation as one of the most powerful ways to build knowledge, awareness, and ultimately affect change. It has been through conversation that we've informed this work, and it will be through ongoing conversation that we will continue this work. Our proposed strategy, as you heard, responds to the more than 1,000 voices who contributed their time, shared their stories, and informed the necessary actions that the city needs to pursue in addressing racial inequities. In the last 18 months, we heard from Ottawa residents and city staff through community consultation, action planning sessions, town halls, and online surveys. We completed environmental scans of anti-racism strategies across different sectors, varying levels of government and industries to capture emerging and wise practices. We established a community anti-racism advisory table with 17 highly engaged leaders from across Ottawa to advise and guide our process, providing community context and insights into emerging racial issues. And we established an internal planning table with representation of city staff from every department across the corporation to translate the conversations into concrete actions. The end product is a strategy with tangible and substantive actions, which will include continually bringing people together throughout its implementation and proactively communicating our commitments back out to the community. Next slide, please. We are looking to create a fundamental shift in how we do work at the city by introducing an anti-racism approach. This approach, through a series of questions and these guiding principles, will aim to ensure racial equity and its sustainability are integrated into how we plan at the city, how we operate, how we allocate our resources, evaluate the work we do, and most importantly, how we engage with each other. As we reflect on the numerous stories shared through consultations on personal experiences of racism, such as countless interviews with limited success in securing employment, experiencing exclusion, unfair treatment, and racial aggression in the workplace, racial profiling in our community, unfair streaming in the school systems, mistreatment in the healthcare system, it forces us to pause. How many of you have witnessed overt racism in your lifetime, subtle or egregious? What did you do? What did you say? How did you feel? And as we reflect on, very recently, the Afzal family, who 1 year ago, yesterday, were killed in London, Ontario at the hands of Islamophobia, and the many names and many hashtags followed by organizational statements of thoughts and prayers for lost lives, we can't lose sight of the harm racism is causing in our community. As such, one of our guiding principles in our strategy emphasizes the work we need to do to repair relationships, to build trust, and to heal as a community. Next slide, please. This strategy proposes an action plan with 7 areas of focus, 28 recommendations, and 132 actions to be implemented over the next 5 years. We are proud that each and every department across the corporation has committed to implementing actions to achieve racial equity in the City of Ottawa. These actions are in direct response to community and staff consultation, are mindful of current departmental ability, and in most instances within existing departmental budgets. The action plan seeks to improve representation in governance and leadership, enhance access to high quality, culturally responsive, community-based services, and create welcoming environments within children and youth development programming. It will implement methods to increase representation on our agencies, boards, commissions, and advisories committees by raising awareness of governance opportunities and updating our appointment policy and recruitment strategy to ensure representation. It will provide operating and or capital funding to private and not-for-profit sector stakeholders for the acquisition of affordable housing assets for racialized groups, including the expansion of the Black-led family housing pilot. It will encourage the creation of housing that represents various familial structures in future procurement or in the provision of funding for the acquisition of existing private housing assets that may be converted to affordable housing. It will provide better support for Black and racialized owned businesses with information, resources, and programs such as incubation and co-working space and entrepreneurship training. It will provide targeted training to navigate the city's procurement processes, applications, and deadlines, and establish criteria to evaluate community impact so that bidders can demonstrate their commitment to social and community impacts, such as racial diversity within their organizations. We heard several themes emerge from the engagement undertaken with city staff, and actions in the proposed strategy respond to addressing experiences of racism in the workplace, increasing learning and capacity building for racialized staff and city staff and leaders, as well as implementing processes to remove the burden associated with reporting incidents of racism. And there are a number of actions that cut across the corporation that are in response to general community feedback or the rise in overt symbols of hate, discrimination, and racism in our city. The strategy also commits to further dialogue to address anti-Asian racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, as well as the unique experiences of those with intersecting identities, such as racialized women and gender diverse persons, members of the 2S LGBTQIA community, people living with disabilities, and newcomers. Next slide, please. We are proposing a phased approach for implementation. We'd like to take some time between June and December to develop our implementation plan and evaluation framework, establish a public communication strategy, including public-facing materials, and socialize the plan with the new term of council prior to our proposed launch in January. In phase one, we will establish the foundation for this work through extensive learning at all levels of the organization. We know many people feel uncomfortable or ill-equipped to talk about race, or fear that talking about it will only make things worse. This came through our staff consultations. We believe the first step needs to be about bringing people together to talk honestly about race, to ensure we have the intercultural competencies, awareness, knowledge, skills, and ability to address racial inequities and position us towards organizational and cultural shifts, with the goal of creating profound and sustainable change. This first phase will also focus on the collection of gender and race desegregated data that will form the baseline against which we can measure the impact of all future actions, and further refine strategies to support meaningful and ongoing engagement in our community. In the second phase, we'll start following a midterm review to evaluate, modify, and course correct on some of the actions we would have implemented. And from this review, we will continue to implement the actions, deepening our ability to apply the anti-racism approach in our program design, in policy development, and service delivery. Next slide, please. This has been and will continue to be a strategy that is co-created and implemented together with community, ensuring we are responding to needs and designing programs and policies to address systemic issues and changing realities over time. Our collective success lies with the implementation and execution of this strategy, and this will be reliant on our shared leadership. In meeting with all FEDCO city councilors, you asked very relevant questions about youth engagement, data collection, resources to support this strategy, and your role to champion and advance this work, showing tremendous interest. In meeting with each departmental leadership team, every general manager expressed strong commitments to collectively advance this work. I'd like to acknowledge Donna Gray as the executive sponsor, ally, and champion for her tremendous leadership in equity and anti-racism across the city. The Anti-Racism Secretariat will support city departments to ensure anti-racism work and actions are mainstreamed in all of our work. And the Anti-Racism Advisory Table will continue to play a key advisory role to the city throughout the implementation of the strategy. Grâce à nos efforts collectifs, nous sommes bien placés.
Thanks to our collective effort, we are well positioned to put forward this policy.
This work On my own journey as a Black woman, mother, wife, daughter of immigrant parents, and all my social identities, and share there is an emotional tax in leading equity work. This work doesn't end at 5 p.m. at the end of each day, nor are we off on weekends, as the experiences of inequities is also an occurrence in our daily lives. To sustain this work is to share the emotional load. It will require champions, allies, and advocates at all levels in the organization throughout Ottawa as a community to realize our goals. And I believe we are up for the task. We heard through consultation with community residents and city staff that the city can be a leader in addressing systemic racism, and that the community and city staff are ready to support and advance this work. We offer for council consideration a comprehensive 5-year anti-racism strategy that points towards a future of possibility, of fairness, of justice, of caring, of improved social harmony and productivity. We are honored to have with us today 3 members of our Community Anti-Racism Advisory Table, Mr. Zuhar Alshir, Mr. Papa Ledzike, and Ms. Tina Walter, who would like to share a few words in closing. But before I pass it to them, I'd like to thank Councillor Ralston King for his vision and leadership in the establishment of the Anti-Racism Secretariat. And I'd like to thank the entire Gender and Race Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development team, past and present. Each member of the service area contributed to the development of this strategy. And so with that, Mr. Alshir will be speaking in Arabic, and translation services are available. Mr. Alshir, please go ahead.
السيد عمدة المدينة جيم
Dear
واتسون،
Mr. Mayor Jim Watson,
السادة المستشارين في المجلس البلدي،
councillors and municipal councils,
السيد مدير بلدية أوتاوا ستيف كانالاكوس،
Mr. Steve Kanilakis.
صباح الخير وأشكركم على منحي
Good
الفرصة
morning,
للمشاركة معكم
and thank
اليوم
you for
في هذه
giving me
الجلسة
this
الهامة.
opportunity to address you.
إنني اليوم أتحدث إليكم باللغة العربية
I'm speaking to
مستلهما
you
بذلك
because
فكرة
of
أن
an
العمل
idea
الجاد والمثمر
to
ورسم
have this
الاستراتيجيات العامة
work,
لا
hard work,
تحتاج
challenging
لغة
work to
لكي
bring you this
نفهمها،
strategy.
بل تحتاج فكرا
This
ورؤية
strategy does not need a
ومبادرة
language to
لكي
claim, but
نتحسس
an
ونرى
idea
نتائجها.
and tangible
يسعدني
results.
اليوم أن أكون معكم لكي
I'm happy to
أشارككم
be with
ما
you
يجول
today to
بخاطري
share
بعد
some
أن
of
قضينا
the
عاما في عمل
ideas
دؤوب
that I have in
مع
my mind.
الزملاء الأعزاء
After
من
working for a
موظفي
full
المدينة
year
من أبناء الجالية المختلفة
of different community sectors in our Ottawa
حتى
Ottawa.
نتمكن من رفع بعض التوصيات
We
الهامة
did all this work
التي
so we
عملنا
can
جميعا على
present
أن
you
تكون
with
واقعية
recommendations
ومنطقية
that are
وقابلة
practical
للتطبيق ولا تبقى
and
حبيسة
logical
الأدراج.
and not just kept as paper in
إننا اليوم
drawers.
نتحدث إليكم
We talk to you today
إننا اليوم نتحدث إليكم عن حاجة المجتمع
about the
ورفض
need of this
العنصرية
community
وترسيخ مبدأ العدالة
to reject
والمساواة
hatred and racism
بين كل فئات
and
المجتمع
establish the
وعلى كل
principle of
الصعد
justice and
بغض
equality
النظر عن
within all
الأصول
segments of the
والدين
society,
والثقافة
regardless of
والهوية.
or
إننا اليوم
country of origin, skin
نحدثكم من
color,
قلوبنا
religion, and
وعقولنا
cultural
كي
identity.
نشارككم رؤية تبذلون كل
Today we
الجهد
share with you
من أجل
a
جعل
vision
مدينتنا
that
الجميلة
you have
وعاصمة
been working
الكنديين
on
الوطنية
to
تظهر على
establish
الدوام بأجمل صورها وأن تكون
a vision
رائدة
that makes our city
في ترسيخ هذه
always seem
القيم
the best and most beautiful
الإنسانية
and
والوطنية.
establish the human and
لذلك
national values.
خرجنا والزملاء بعدة
We have
توصيات
come up
مهمة
with these
في ظل
recommendations
في ظل ظروف معقدة
under difficult
وتحديات ضخمة.
circumstances and
لذلك
challenges.
لم يكن أمامنا مجال
For
إلا
that,
أن
we chose
نتحدث
to speak
بمصداقية
with full
كاملة
credibility, armed with
متحمسين
faith,
متسلحين بذلك بالإيمان واليقين
certainty,
والمسؤولية
and
الحقيقية
sincere care
والغيرة الصادقة على
for
مدينتنا
a
أوتاوا
true
وبلد
responsibility towards
أحببناه
our city
وأحبنا.
and the country we
شاركنا
love.
في هذه التوصيات وهذه
We
الاستراتيجية
share in this
الواعدة
recommendation
في هذا المشروع الحيوي بالتحديد
in this
لكي
vital
نكون
project
شركاء بسلامة
that will
بلدنا
be
ونهضته
partners
وتطوره
in the safety and
بما
uplifting
يتناغم مع
and
رغبتنا
development of
الجامحة
our
بأن
country
تكون مدينتنا
based on
وعاصمة
our
بلدنا
sincere
الوطنية
desire
هي الأجمل
that our
على
city
كل الصعد
and our nation
وآمنة
become the
وجاذبة
most
للسياح
beautiful
والمستثمرين
and
لكي
at
تصبح
every
أجمل
level
عاصمة في
and
العالم
attractive
تليق
to
بكندا
investors, tourists, and will
والكنديين.
become the most beautiful capital in the world.
اليوم نؤكد على أن هناك ضرورة
Today we
لأنه لم يعد
confirm
يوجد
that
هناك مستحيل لدينا
there is
عندما
nothing for us
عندما
that's
رسختم
impossible
بوعيكم ورؤيتكم المستقبلية
since that you have
الواعدة
firmly established
مبدأ
the
المشاركة
principle of
المجتمعية
community
في رسم
participation
الاستراتيجية العامة
in the
وهذا هو
design
الأساس
of
في
public
نجاح أي رؤية
strategy
مستقبلية
and
ترتكز على الاستثمار
this
في
is the
الإنسان
basis for any future
وطاقاته
vision that
وإبداعاته
focuses
لكي يصبح هناك
on
مجتمع
investing in people
مبدعا خاليا من الجريمة
to have a
والتمييز
creative
والكراهية.
community
إنني اليوم
that's free
جئت
of
إليكم
crime and discrimination.
إنني اليوم جئت إليكم
Today
لكي أتحدث
I
إليكم
came
عن ما
to you
تعانيه
to talk
فئات كبيرة
about the
من
suffering
أبناء جاليتنا
that
المسلمة
many
من
sector
العزلة
of the Muslim
نتيجة
community
القلق
suffer
والخوف
here
من
because of
الإسلاموفوبيا
anxiety,
والممارسات
fear,
الفردية
and
المجنونة
Islamophobia, and
والمرفوضة
the
على
insane
كل الصعد
individual practices
المجتمعية
that
والرسمية
are not
والتي
acceptable
بالإمكان محاصرتها
at all level, public and
وعزلها
community. We
وعدم السماح
have to
بخلق
be,
بيئة
we have to isolate
لوجودها
these
ونموها من
incidences and
الأصل
practices and
وهذا
not
ما يجب
allow
أخذه
the
بعين
condition
الاعتبار من
for
مبادرتكم
these
الاستراتيجية الأولى من
practices
نوعها
to
هذه.
exist and develop
لذلك
in our community.
لا أريد أن أتحدث عن مسببات هذا الأمر
I don't want to
المرعب
talk about the causes,
ولكني أريد أن أخبركم
but I want
بأننا
to tell
سئمنا
you
البحث في الأسباب ونريد أن ننتقل إلى مرحلة
we have
العمل
enough of looking into
والبناء
the causes and we have to move
وذلك
now into
من خلال اتخاذ خطوات
taking
عملية
practical
قابلة للتحقيق
steps that
والتنفيذ
are realizable
وليس البقاء في دائرة الشجب
and achieve
والاستنكار
results
والوعود التي لا حصر
and
لها
not just stay in the
وحصر
cycle
الأمر
of
في الدعم المالي
condemnation
لهذه
and
الفئة أو تلك
promises and
التي
funding,
قد تكون
financial
غير
funding for
مؤهلة
this group or that
ومنتفعة
group,
ولا تعمل للصالح العام
even
من أجل
if they,
تجاوز مثل هذا
regardless of
التحدي
whether
الخطير.
they are useful
لذلك
or not for
نحن
the
نريد أن
community.
ننتقل من مرحلة التشخيص إلى مرحلة
That's
العلاج
why I would like
الجذري
us to go
والكامل
from diagnosing
حتى
the
نصبح
problem
مجتمعا مبدعا
into the
ومتعايشا
therapeutic
في ظل وجود
phase,
هذه الفسيساء
so we can
الثقافية
have a
التي
society,
تمثل
a
مصدر
creative
فخر
society,
واعتزاز لكل كندي.
that is a real
إن الأمر
mosaic and
يحتاج
that should
اليوم
be a pride
صرامة
for all Canadians.
في ترسيخ الوعي على المستوى
It's
الفردي
necessary to firmly
والمجتمعي
establish
وذلك من
the
خلال
awareness of
تشكيل لجنة
individual and
متابعة
community at all
فاعلة
levels,
رسمية
whether
ومجتمعية
this is
تعمل ليل نهار
official or
من
communal,
أجل خلق بيئة
and we should be
مجتمعية
working day and night. This
وواعية
committee,
على كل الصعد
a follow-up committee that should work
ولا تسمح
day
لنمو
and
أي
night
خلايا نائمة أو أفكار متطرفة وفي كل
remove
المجالات
any
لجنة
sleeping
من
cells
أصحاب
or
الخبرة
condition for sleeping
لديها
cells
رؤية
or
مستقبلية واعدة
um,
ومنطقية
fractions of the
وقدرة على
society
المبادرة
with
لمحاصرة آثار أي
extremist
حدث
ideas.
فردي طارئ لكي لا نجعل من
And we
أحد
should have the
ضحية
ability
الشعور الدائم بالظلم
to
وبالتالي
work through
الانعزال عن
any
الواقع
unpleasant
بدلا من
incidences
الاندماج والإبداع ولا
and
ترتهن
make sure that
صدمة
the
أحداث
individuals
طارئة فقط.
are able to
وهنا
realize
وقبل
their
أن أنهي
dreams
كلماتي هذه
and
أود
without
منكم أن
being
تحرصوا على
forced
إزالة
into
مسببات الخوف من
different
عقل المهاجر
mindset.
الذي يأتي لكندا لكي يحقق آماله وتطلعاته
The person, the
وأحلامه
immigrant person
حتى لا يصطدم بمجموعات
who
راغبي
comes to
السيطرة
Canada to realize
وراغبي
their own
ترسيخ
dreams
مبدأ العبودية غير
should not
المباشرة
be faced
التي
with
تحاول أن تهدد ثقافته
groups that
وهويته
are trying to
والسيطرة على
force
أحلامه
this
وجعله
person
أسيرا لأفكارهم الشريرة
in a
لتجعله
circle
على
of
الدوام يعيش
modern
في حالة
slavery
قلق
to influence
وخوف
his
ورعب من
ideas
مجهول
and
ما
live
تحمله
in
كلمة اندماج
a
العامة
terrorist
لذلك
in
يجب
terror and
علينا
fear
لجم مثل
of
هؤلاء
losing
الذين يقومون
their
بذلك
identity.
وعوضا عن ذلك تجيع
Instead of that,
النماذج صاحبة المبادرة والرؤية
we
الحوارية
should follow the
الصادقة
models
والأمينة
that have
والإبداعية
creative
والقادرة على
initiatives
المشاركة في
that
إيجاد
are
حلول
initiatives and
وعلاج.
people and models
نعم
that are able to
نحتاج
be part of the
لقرار
community,
بعدم خلق بيئة تساعد على نشر أفكار
and we
انعزالية
have to make sure that we have an
وهدامة
environment that is not
والتأكيد على أن
conducive
نحرص كل الحرص
of
بأن تكون دعوتنا هي
oppression,
الاندماج الإبداعي
and we
وليس
should be
بالضرورة
able
الاندماج
to
الثقافي
provide
أو انصهار
environment
الهوية
for
كما
creative
يحاول البعض غزو فكر
participation in the
المهاجر
community,
مبكرا
not
لكي يعزله عن مجتمعه ويسهل
isolating the
مبدأ
immigrant
السيطرة عليه ومن
from
ثم
their
خلق حالة
community, original
عدائية
community,
ما بينه
and
وبين
dissolve their
مجتمعه
identity
وبلده الذي يعيش فيه
into
ويحمل هويته والذي من
another
المفترض
community.
Mr.
أنه
Elsher,
ينتمي إليه.
Mr.
نعم.
Elsher, if you could wrap up because there's two other speakers that would like to speak.
I'm almost finished. I'm just going. أخيرا دعونا أن نكون مجتمعا دعونا أن نكون مجتمعا متصالحا على الدوام واحدا موحدا تحت مظلة واحدة هي كندا يقف مع بعضه البعض كالبنيان المرصوص من أجل جعل مدينتنا عاصمة بلادنا الوطنية هي الأكثر أمانا وخالية من كل مظاهر العنصرية في كل مكان كان ولأي سبب كان حتى تصبح بلادنا العظيمة كندا هي الأجمل في العالم وليس فقط عيوننا في عيوننا وذلك من خلال التوزيع العادل لفرص العمل والارتقاء بكفاءة الفرد والاستعداد الدائم لحل المشاكل مبكرا ومنح الأكفاء فرصتهم بدلا من إذابة خبراتهم وعدم الاستفادة منها وبالتالي عدم تعميق المشاكل المجتمعية وعدم إفساح المجال لغزو فكري متطرف على كل الصعد لا يؤدي إلا للمزيد من العنصرية والكراهية. We don't like to be in the back. We would like to be in front, and we should be. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, very much for your presentation. Next is Papa Ladijike, followed by Tina Walter. Papa, good morning. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Monsieur le maire. Bonjour tout le monde. Mesdames, Messieurs les conseillers. J'aimerais tout d'abord souligner la belle initiative.
I'd like to highlight this wonderful initiative that the City of Ottawa has developed to bring together stakeholders in our community in their diversity, wealth of experience and expertise to bring them around the anti-racism strategy table. This is proof that our leaders have understood that it's time to change strategy and that it's time to think about real people and the real issues that affect communities. Racism is a matter of culture.
Et ça s'incruse profondément dans un inconscient collectif d'une majorité de privilégiés.
And really, it's deeply embedded in the collective unconscious of a privileged majority. Therefore, it takes time, courage, truth, compassion, as well as an honest and transparent alliance to come together to overcome the systemic discriminations that have been passed down from generation to generation. The reality is at the root of many of the racial traumas, complex traumas, as well as intergenerational traumas. And as a mental health professional myself, I encounter on a daily basis in our community people who have been affected by this. The work around this strategy has been masterfully led by a proud Black woman, a leader, Suzanne Obiora. She's demonstrated inclusive leadership. She's brought together all components of diversity at the City of Ottawa. Our team and her have given voice to different members of our community to share their challenges, their issues, and their ideas and solutions. So through this work, the City of Ottawa has positioned itself as a model in the drive to build a more just and inclusive society together by addressing systemic barriers inherited from a history based on discrimination and racism. Now, it will take strong political will and courageous leadership to implement the great conclusions of this exceptional work. In a world marked by the rise of extremism, dictatorship, and racial hatred, we have a heavy responsibility to build a society based on respect for difference and equality. And this anti-racism strategy can be a strong lever to face this rise of racial hatred and to tackle the colonial legacy based on racial inequalities. Any change, of course, requires going through discomfort and a loss of privilege in many cases. But I do hope that as policymakers, as leaders, you will do this work and you'll make this work a reality with and for our communities, and that you'll work in an honest, strong, and sustainable alliance with us. So, of the leaders in my community, including me who participate in this work, we're very, very proud, and we hope that it will be a success that we hope it will be for our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Papa. The next person to speak is Tina Walters.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I want to first and foremost thank you, the committee members here, Mr. Mayor, and others for the great opportunity to say a few words. What I prepared on reflection is basically reinforcing, I think, what a lot of folks have said already around the table. I will say this because this is my first thought, as everybody has done and recognized, is to thank the city and all keenly involved in the creation of this historic, urgent, and important anti-racism strategy. Councillor King, thank you so much for championing this. The development of this strategy was no easy task, yet under the leadership of Suzanne, I experienced the authentic commitment by her and team to get this done, and in a way that was not performative. Mais au lieu de cela, visionnaire, engageant la...
She and her team were visionaries in this strategy.
Responsable et ancré dans le leadership du caractère.
This strategy is based around strength of leadership and character.
Speaking of leadership, I think this is an opportunity for the city to become a leader in Canada, to show all that systemic and interpersonal racism are an unacceptable state of affairs, and if left untended, will continue to harm all our communities. Regardless of the color of your skin, your religious or spiritual beliefs, your sex, your gender identity, your ethnicity, your age, your diverse abilities, who aspires to live a life of fear, hate, suspicion, trauma, disharmony, unfair advantage, and exclusion? Who does that? Je dis cela en reconnaissant que nous devons
I say this
efficace d'être
recognizing
de la fragilité blanche et
that white fragility is a real phenomenon.
à la polarisation politique et la fausse représentation du son de la liberté. The anti-racism strategy is robust. By robust, I mean that the strategy does not hesitate to highlight the persistent negative impacts of the legacy of colonialism and the enslavement system. It is educational, evidence-based, informed by broad community engagement with the intent to continue, which is superb, covers key sectors for change, including the city's workforce and organizational culture, recognizes the need for the continued collection of disaggregated data, and taking an intersectional approach to analysis and the criticality of developing an evaluation strategy that would be outcomes focused. Bravo. My last thought is about the opportunities to make positive and sustainable change. If colonization, including the enslavement system, and its legacy of exclusionary practices can be embedded in institutions for hundreds of years, then so can liberation, repatriation, reconciliation, diversity, equity, and inclusion for the next hundreds of years. I congratulate you all, and I'm looking forward to continuing to be a member of the advisory table. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Tina. Thank you very much, Tina. Does anyone have any questions to the delegations or the staff? Councillor El-Shantiri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my question to Suzanne, actually, not to the delegation. If you want me to wait till after, I can ask after.
No, that's good. You can do that now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Suzanne, for laying out the strategy. We've seen the timeline you have assigned. This is that timeline is going to be sufficient to take us to the next level?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we've set out to achieve is what we believe to be doable in the timelines that we've established. I'll reiterate by saying that we are starting off with establishing the foundation for this work. And while the implementation of many of these actions may not reach completion in the 5 years that we've laid out to begin this work, we do believe that we can implement many of these strategies within this time frame, and will likely require review, evaluation, course correction to understand the impacts of the actions that we've implemented. But we're looking at this as a long-term strategy. And really this is, as I shared before, implementing the work, implementing foundational work that we envision will be really a shift in the way that we operate at the City of Ottawa.
The reason I'm asking you, Suzanne, when I met with you, my concern was about the measurable, how we measure our success. That's one of the areas I'm interested in. The other area I'm interested in, where would you incorporate with the community safety plan and well-being? Because it's very important to keep our focus in the same direction and working together with Donna Gray's group, well, your group, Donna's group, on a community safety plan and well-being, how to make the connection between the two, your strategy and the community plan and community safety plan and well-being together to go hand in hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A big component of this work is an evaluation framework where each of the actions that we've proposed will have key performance indicators against which we will measure our progress to help us with being able to determine our success. And what I'll say is this work is foundational and builds upon all the other strategies that take place at the City of Ottawa. Within our strategy, there are concrete actions that have been defined by the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And really, when we look to advance our equity work, whether it's our women and gender equity strategy, our corporate diversity and inclusion plan, our vision is to integrate the principles of anti-racism across all city strategies. So we work in close collaboration with all departments and build on existing strategies and move away from siloed attempts. Within the Community and Safety and Wellbeing Plan, one of its anchors is racism, discrimination, and marginalization. And that's through the integration of the anti-racism approach that we're proposing. So this needs to be a collaborative and collective effort and not seen as a separate piece of work here at the city.
Anything else, Councillor?
Well, I'd like to hear from Donna, Mr. Mayor, if I may, because in discussion with Suzanne, I know the focus was internally on staff in the City of Ottawa and all, and now we have broadened this to the community as a whole. So I just like to make sure we don't, you know, we are working together with the main focus of the community, not, you know, because Suzanne's focus was the strategy for city employment, and that, now we're seeing we expand to the community as a whole. And I'd like to know how we are reaching to the community as a whole to get the proper representation from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. So, you know, we're starting right now in the selection of the advisory committee of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So we have put an equity lens on that, really focus on ensuring that the guidance of the plan really takes specific focus on racialized communities and Indigenous communities. So you'll start to see the requests that went out with specifically looking for people who have lived experience or who are providing services to racialized and Indigenous organizations. So that really sets the governance framework. And then what we've been doing is, and there'll be a group that we talked about, our community capacity building group, that is going to work with each one of those pillars and those task teams to make sure that the actions of the anti-racism strategy and the recommendations that are in the strategy today are embedded in those plans. So for example, the homelessness and housing pillar, which is a pillar of community and safety and well-being, will take those actions that this group has proposed today and embed those into the organizations and the work that needs to happen. And we'll do that in each pillar, the financial and the poverty reduction. So really we are having an emphasis on the preventative factors that really are addressing those root causes of community safety and well-being, as well as the practices. So how we consult, how we engage, the methods we engage, how we translate, all of that will be built and integrated into the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So Suzanne's team works very much in partnership with each one of those. And we're really excited about the opportunity to bring this lens into the community work that we're doing in partnership with the community.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Suzanne, for an outstanding report. I know how big this is and how important it is. And I really commend you for this work. And it can't help but feel personal to yourself and to all of us in terms of how we deal with everything, and our actions, our words, etc. As the liaison on women and gender equity, I wanted to ask you about intersectionality and on gender as well, since that is very much an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, for your remarks. One of the guiding principles of the strategy is focused on intersectionality. So the strategy acknowledges the many dimensions of our social identity race, gender, sexuality, ability, class, religion, and what we state in our strategy is that we do not exist separately or in isolation of each other, but rather the experiences of racism are shaped by our multiple and overlapping identities. And so an intersectional approach to anti-racism really is a foundational element of addressing systemic racism as we appreciate racism in relationship to other forms of discrimination. And we absolutely recognize racism and sexism combined produce inequalities for racialized women and gender diverse persons. And so integrating simultaneously a gender lens to anti-racism needs to be explored, examined, and addressed. And so this very much, again, the strategy aligns and builds on existing work that's taking place at the city, such as our women and gender equity strategy, such as our corporate diversity and inclusion plan, as well as our community safety and well-being plan, which has a pillar on gender-based violence and women and violence against women.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. I very much appreciate all this work. I think it's groundbreaking, and I believe it's just begun. And I feel it's very important, not only in our relationship with the community, which of course is important, but also how we look at ourselves and what we do within our corporation as a city. I think we have to walk the walk, and I think we're on our way to doing that. I want to thank Councillor King for all his work and energy in getting this going, and I think it's really important, and I hope to continue working as a partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Menard, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation and the work to date. There's obviously a lot that still needs to happen in the future, and getting to this point is a huge pinnacle, but obviously a lot more that we need to put actions into, words into actions. And on that front, I'm just, is there funding attached to this report specifically, or is that being allocated towards the 2022 to 2026 term of council? And what kind of funding is needed in that first budget to start to realize some of the objectives that have been outlined in the strategy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the strategy sets the roadmap for us to begin our journey towards racial equity in the city. And we know this will not end in 2028. There's much work for us to do. Many of the actions that we have proposed build on work that is taking place. Recreation, youth action plan, for example, 10-year housing and homelessness plan, the new economic development strategy. And we're applying the anti-racism lens and reviewing data to ensure that the way we proceed in these strategies does not further create racial inequities. We do anticipate additional resources will be required for learning and development, community engagement, and the evaluation of the strategy, which we will bring forward for consideration as part of the city's next budget cycle. That will be considered in the context of other budget pressures. But we do believe we can implement the actions outlined in the strategy over the term that over the 5-year term that we've proposed.
Thank you, and thank you again for the work. I do want to make sure we fund this strategy. We often do strategies and don't necessarily put the funding behind it. We need to action the plan that you've put in place here, and just appreciate all of your work to get to this point. And Councillor King, as a liaison, what you've done to really advance the city's conversations around this topic. So thank you to everyone involved.
Councillor King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just have some comments, no questions. But I just want to,
you to know, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, city colleagues, and fellow residents of Ottawa. Before I begin, I'd really like to recognize the unceded, unsurrendered land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples on which we're gathered. I think we've heard that today is a very special day for many of us who share great hope and aspiration for the city, and who have also had a hand in crafting the path that brought us to this historic opportunity. To each and all, I convey a deep and abiding gratitude, especially our guests, Zuhair, Papa, and Tina, from the Anti-Racism Advisory Table who addressed us today. The last few years have been unlike any before for our usually quiet city. In 2018, it was the tornado. In 2019, it was the global pandemic. In 2020, the George Floyd murder catalyzed global awareness and then action against racial discrimination, uprising of social justice movements, discovery of unmarked graves at residential schools across the country, increased acts of hate, of racist hate in our community, an EF2 category thunderstorm, which created prolonged power outages in the city. And of course, earlier this year, it was the 3-week truck blockade that wreaked havoc on our peaceful community and penalized our local economy to the tune of $30 million. Yes, it was just last February, only months ago, organized by individuals, including some who champion white nationalism, racism, and Islamophobia. And in our streets, we saw racist, anti-Semitic, xenophobic symbols, the denigration of Indigenous culture, the denigration of rainbow flags, and we heard ignorant words spewed. And we shared a collective sigh when they left our city. But we also took away something very important. We were reminded that racism, ignorance, and hatred is not welcome in Ottawa. In fact, the Anti-Racism Secretariat was born out of a catalyst event in 2019 when a racial slur was spray painted on a family's garage door in Rideau Rockcliffe. This act of hate and racial discrimination was shocking and devastating. It sparked concern amongst racialized communities across Ottawa, including organizations such as the African Canadian Association of Ottawa, 613-819 Black Hub, Ottawa Local Immigration Partnership, the Ottawa Muslim Association, Jewish Family Services of Ottawa, and many, many others who wanted municipal action. It was this pivotal moment that led to the community's proposal for the creation of an anti-racism secretariat in the city and its approval by City Council. Mayor Watson, fellow councillors, city colleagues, and fellow Ottawa residents. As your council liaison on anti-racism and ethnocultural initiatives, I'm here to tell you something that I'm confident you already know. The time to act is now. Our anti-racism strategy speaks to that. It is the right thing at the right time. It speaks to the hopes of our city. As has been pointed out, it has come about through a rigorous direct consultation and engagement process that spanned more than 15 months. It is an authentic and durable representation of the aspirations of over 1,000 local residents, subject matter experts, city employees, and city partners. During our engagement process, the residents of the city told us that they wanted Ottawa to be a leader in addressing systemic racism. They told us that the community is ready to support this work. They want transparency from the city, and they want to be continuously involved in a process that advances equity in employment, equity in economic development, equity in governance, equity in health, equity in housing, and equity in investing in our youth. They want to see actions to validate that the city is listening. They are asking for accountability. We will meet that through established metrics and indicators to assess our progress on achieving the intended outcomes the strategy is meant to achieve. We will also capture, collect, and report on race disaggregated data as part of our accountability framework. I want to tell you that the strategy also recognizes that there are different perspectives on how to address racism against Indigenous people. We want to approach this work in a good way, ensuring we respectfully engage with the First Nations and urban Indigenous communities in ways that foster sustained and strong relationships. Made up of the views, voices, and ideas of residents from across Ottawa, this strategy reinforces our city's commitment to closing gaps and addressing racial divides through a coordinated, trauma-informed, and systems-wide approach. I must tell you that allyship is very important. By allyship, I mean that this is not just the duty of Black, Indigenous, and racialized people. It is a shared responsibility for everyone. We need all hands on deck to address these deeply entrenched systemic barriers imposed against many by structural institutional power. Our strategy is appropriately fitting for our world-class cosmopolitan city. It helps us ensure that the people of Ottawa feel safe, irrespective of racial and intersectional identities. It also ensures equitable access to city programs, services, resources, and opportunities. By doing good for our people, this strategy also contributes to a better, more prosperous municipality. Everyone gains. This plan is a call for action to all people of Ottawa. It establishes the foundation to confront and remove racial inequity. It is also an opportunity to better serve Ottawa residents, redress societal issues, collectively heal, and build a better future for all. This plan started with the community. It will continue to belong to the community. That is why, in my capacity as council liaison, it remains my commitment to keep our community engaged. We all know it is time to act. Words are good, but actions vindicate words. The great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." He made that call for racial and social justice in 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial. Next year will make it 60 years since he made that plea. So in closing, I say to you that in this very important time in the evolution of our great city, this anti-racism strategy helps us meet this challenge. I invite all residents of Ottawa to collectively contribute to denouncing forms of hate. I invite each and all of us to speak up and speak out to issues that remove barriers to ensure the full inclusion of Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities. I look forward to collaborating on the road ahead towards ensuring our city and our country remains a shining example to all. Thank you again to everyone, to all our partners, city staff, and community members who were pivotal in shaping and bringing the anti-racism strategy forward. And I'd also like to thank all of my council colleagues for their unwavering support in pursuing greater equity and greater justice for all in our city. Thank you, Your Worship.
Great. Thank you. Very well said, Councillor. Appreciate that very much and all the hard work and heavy lifting you've done. And Suzanne and colleagues from the community, thank you for your participation. Bravo. Merci beaucoup. So on item 1, received this report. Received.
Received.
Item 2, approve the proposed anti-racism strategy as attached in document 1 to this report. Carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Next item is item 8, City of Ottawa Municipal Accessibility Plan Annual Update. We have a brief presentation from the program manager, Lucille. And I don't know if is Lucille on the call now? Just looking for her. I think I see Lucille under Rick O'Connor's name.
Do you see me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Yep. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Perfect. So good morning. Bonjour. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the city's accessibility plan. As you know, people with disabilities, including older adults, are a large and growing population in Ottawa, Ontario, and in Canada. There are 2.6 million people in Ontario with a disability, and more than 40% of this population is over the age of 65. The city's population is aging, and this number will continue to grow. Thanks to the commitment of council, the work of staff, including the city's accessibility working group, and the devotion of the volunteers on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, including AAC Liaison Councillor Luloff, the City of Ottawa remains an accessibility leader in Ontario and in Canada in accessibility. With the exception of Section 14, accessibility websites and web content, the city remains fully compliant with all applicable requirements of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. In 2021, the city continued to make significant progress on increasing accessibility of its more than 80 public-facing websites and applications. On ottawa.ca, the city's main website, Staff are maintaining compliance with more than 95.5% of pages. Smaller City of Ottawa websites and applications, which are owned and maintained by various city departments, have also seen much improvement, with more than 30% certified as compliant with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. All city websites and applications have now been assessed, and accessibility plans are being executed. Much of 2021 has been devoted to ensuring people with disabilities were appropriately and equitably accommodated with respect to COVID vaccine. We continue to monitor, engage, and support the community of people with disabilities amid the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, the Accessibility Office continued to coordinate the Ontario Network of Accessibility Professionals, partner with the Canadian Accessibility Network through Carleton University, and share resources and expertise with other levels of government. In 2022, city staff are participating in standards development and standards review committees, both at the federal and the provincial levels. Slide number 3. La recommandation numéro 2 vise à faire approuver un processus par lequel le personnel consultera le comité consultatif sur l'accessibilité en indiquant clairement quand et comment le personnel doit consulter le CAA pour apporter une valeur ajoutée au projet de la ville et améliorer l'accessibilité. Le processus a été piloté de 2017 à 2021 pour s'assurer que le processus considère les besoins du comité et ce soit précis pour les départements. En 2021, le CAA a tenu 8 réunions, ont partagé leur avis sur 44 projets municipaux et ont examiné des plans d'implantation 87 fois. Ils ont aussi participé à de nombreux groupes de travail et à une foule d'études municipales d'évaluation environnementale et de consultation pour les projets de revitalisation. Examples of some of the projects for which the AAC provided feedback in 2021 include the Paratranspo Customer Experience, Affordable Housing Capital Plan 2021, and the 2022 Draft Operating and Capital Budgets. I cannot express how valuable the AAC is to the corporation, and this process recognizes the committee's valuable time by developing efficient ways to engage them. Slide 4. La recommandation numéro 5 vise à faire approuver une nouvelle directive qui facilite la tâche du personnel de compléter la section répercussions sur l'accessibilité. Dans les rapports présentés aux conseillers depuis 2011, conformément à la motion du Conseil. Recommendation 5 approves new instructions for staff to complete the mandatory accessibility impact section for reports to Council since 2021 as per the Council motion. La directive examine les exigences visant à respecter les normes de la LAPHO, les obligations en matière de consultation et les conséquences du projet concerné ou du rapport sur les résidents ayant des handicaps visibles ou non visibles. Pour mettre en pratique la directive, le Bureau d'accessibilité offre un soutien accru aux rédacteurs des rapports relatifs à cette section depuis septembre 2021. Et depuis ce temps, plus de 60 rapports ont été examinés. Cette pratique a permis une meilleure compréhension de la réponse attendue dans cette section et partage l'information sur le soutien de nombreux projets. The combination of simplified instructions and the enhanced support has resulted in more concise accessibility implication information for Council and the community's consumption. Slide number 5. Recommendations 3 and 4 approve changes to the accessibility policy and procedures to ensure English and French residents who are deaf and have other types of disabilities can access emergency information. It ensures that all verbal, live, and pre-recorded state of emergency and other large-scale emergency-related communications are proactively including American Sign Language, simultaneous French and English interpretation, langue des signes québécois, and captioning when practicable. In 2021, this included critical information for residents on vaccine clinic rollout, COVID-19 protocols, the downtown occupation, and the 2022 information related to the storm on the May long weekend. Slide 6, please. Recommendation number 6 also recognizes that council's communications with constituents with disabilities may have increased due to the COVID pandemic. It approves the extension of the pilot to permit members of council to access the council administrative budget to enhance the accessibility of their communication products. Coordinated by the Accessibility Office, there is $10,000 allocated on a first-come, first basis for the funds, and it can be used for captioning and transcript, sign language interpretation, both in English and in French, personal support workers for live events, Braille translation, and creating accessible Word, PDF, or PowerPoint documents, including ward newsletters. Also, 20% of the fund per year can be used to increase accessibility of councilors' websites and e-documents, such as newsletters. I would encourage councilors to reach out to the Accessibility Office to assist with requests for accessible formats and communication supports, and or if you would like to proactively enhance the accessibility and inclusion of community products, websites, we can share tips and techniques with your staff. In closing, we are aware that there's always more to do. Going forward, we are looking at the intersectionality of people with disabilities and the needs associated with their many social identities. We look forward to collaborating with all departments in identifying, reducing barriers in these new areas in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucille. Merci beaucoup, Lucille. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Any questions? I want to thank Councillor Luloff, who's the council liaison on the advisory committee. Appreciate that. Councillor King, do you have your hand up?
Yes, just a brief question. I really want to thank Lucille for the work at the Accessibility Office and also previously the work in Councillors Row. And in that capacity, I think that you help facilitate the installation of accessibility devices, accessibility door in terms of my office. I was just curious. I know that this might be out of the scope of what you brought for discussion today, but I was just wondering with the potential, with the renovation of some of our offices to accommodate the new ward office, whether that type of technology would just be made universal through Councillor Row's offices. So people with different modes of accessibility would be able to access offices easier.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor King. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention is always to add more accessibility when renovations are being done. That is in line with the city's accessibility design standards, and therefore all projects would be looking at that. And if there's anything in particular that you would be looking for, we can certainly take that offline. But thank you for the question.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So we have 7 recommendations. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Luloff, do you have your hand up? I didn't.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity to publicly thank, and I know that we went through accessibility accessibility day last week and made extensive comments about the incredible work that our Accessibility Advisory Committee puts in. You cannot quantify the amount of work that these incredible volunteers put in every single day. Yes, we had 5 regular meetings last year, but there are countless hours and very lengthy email chains where these incredible community members are providing advice on parks and other ameliorations, site plan review. It's unbelievable the amount that they give of themselves for this city. So I want to thank the chair, Mr. Turcotte, as well as all of our incredible committee members, past and present, over the course of this term, for their work. They are truly making Ottawa a better place to live, work, and play for everyone. And as I've said in the past, our public spaces at the City of Ottawa are not truly public unless they're accessible to everyone. And the work that they're doing every single day is helping to get us there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So on recommendations 1 to 7, carried. Thank you to the advisory committee and Lucille and your staff. Very much appreciate it. 2 items were held by Councillor Menard. First one is item 3, finance lease agreements, or I'm sorry, tax and rate operating budget Q1 status. Councillor Menard, you had a question to the treasurer.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And if it's more efficient, I can just go through the questions on the couple different items. The first one is on the prudent investor status. I'm very happy to see the city is making progress on obtaining this status. It's important. I understand if they do, the authority for investments will be delegated to the Municipal Investment Board with a outsourced chief investment officer for that specific function. So some questions around that is, can council direct investment priorities within this structure, or are they an arm's length entity? How will the board be selected? And then in terms of the investment priorities that FEDCO and Environment Committee have laid out previously, we've talked about aligning them with the city's commitments on climate change. So a question around divestment from fossil fuel investments and the city's prudent investor status. Does that mean that the city will look to divest and make investment decisions based on that social environmental responsibility we've talked about in the past?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the questions. I will do my best to answer all of them. Might ask you just to repeat to make sure I've covered everything. And I'm going to ask some of my colleagues actually to jump in as well to provide some supporting answers here. First and foremost, we will bring an investment policy back to Council for approval. So Council will see that, much like we have done in the past. And that speaks to your comments and feedback with respect to the divestment of fossil fuels. And one of the things that we will seek to do is really align us to the ESG, right? To ensure that we're investing prudently, aligned with regulation and the legislation in place. And so that policy will direct the board in terms of the investments that will be made. So that is going to set the stage for everything overall. In terms of the board selection, there is a process that is governed through my colleague, Mr. O'Connor's office. So I'm just going to ask Rick if he could opine on the selection process for that and how he's going to aid us through that process.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my camera here going. Thank you very much. Yes, the city treasurer is absolutely correct. My office will be assisting with the appointment process with regard to this matter, and we will be using the council approved appointment process for that very matter. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Really appreciate your work on this and getting us to this point, Stephenson. On the next item, it's the allocation around the climate change budget. So the commitment is to allocate $1 million in one-time funding through capital close for climate change initiatives directed by council. Really appreciate staff following through on this, finding that the means for that, for the energy evolution implementation. Obviously, it's pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but that is what we directed when we did discuss this. The original idea was to reinvest the savings from energy efficiency measures into climate change initiatives that can, again, further savings and reduce emissions. Is that still the plan at this point? And I say that with the question, prefacing that with the fact that the other source of funding for the climate change team is really the Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus. And that is not secure. So it varies year to year. It's been used for dealing with the effects of climate change in the past, responding to storms rather than the root causes. And so I just want to make sure we're setting ourselves up in the future for dedicated sources of funding that can, again, reap benefits and save us money over time while reducing emissions. So a couple of questions in there.
Yeah, thanks very much. There will be an update that will come to the June Standing Committee of the Environment Protection, Water and Wastewater Management. And it will speak to, I believe, the spending plan for this. So you'll get a purview of that. With respect to the revolving fund, I'm going to ask my colleague, Mr. Purwire, just to speak to that, because that's going to be part of the update that goes to the Standing Committee as well.
Thanks, Wendy. Yes, Councillor, if I understand your question, is it regarding the $1 million amount or the future hydro dividend?
I'm looking for feedback on both, if possible.
Okay, I believe, as Ms. Stephenson indicated, we will have information in June on the revolving fund. The $1 million, as you indicated, approximately 2/3 will be going towards energy evolution and 1/3 toward the resiliency piece for the climate change master plan. So happy to give you a further breakdown on that, but that's at a high level the breakdown of the $1 million.
Okay, and on the Hydro Ottawa Dividends Fund, is that something that the expectation is it'll continue where it's been allocated, or is there some other plan?
Wendy, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, happy to. So there was a motion with respect to the direction of those funds to the end of this term of council. As I understand, Hydro will be presenting to council their annual report and results, their financial results, at the late June council meeting, which I believe is June 22nd, and forgive me if I have that date wrong. The report will be released, I believe, publicly on June 17th, which is the Friday before. So that's where we'll see if there are excess funds with respect to the dividend. And I believe Mr. Herwire's staff is also preparing something in terms of what that spend plan would look like. And that would go to the next standing committee as well for consideration, just pending what that hydro dividend surplus looks like.
Thank you very much. The gas tax funds that were previously allocated, that double up, is that also supposed to go to the long range financial plan meeting? Is that when we're going to see, where that might be allocated?
That will be part of the transit long range financial plan, which is scheduled to go to FEDCO on June 28th.
Okay, thank you for that. And then just my last question about these reports is our city debt. It appears that our city debt in these reports is just over $3 billion. We just took out another $200 million debt obligation. And so just to clarify, our city debt is now just over 3.2 billion. And it was back 10 years ago, we were just over $1 billion. Is that accurate for where we are?
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor. And I would also point out as well, if you look at the growth of our assets over that same period of time, they've grown significantly more. So when you look back and look forward to today, our assets are, I want to say, closer to $26 billion in terms of the investment that we have made.
Okay, thank you. And the question I had previously around our debt obligation payments per year, annual per year, I haven't received that yet. If someone can just send that to me of what it was at $1 billion and what it is now at $3 billion annually would be helpful.
We'll get that to you, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 4, tax and rate operating capital budget Q1 status. Recommendations 1 to 3 carried. Item 5, investments 2021 endowment fund and other treasury activities. The recommendations 1 to 7 carried. Adopted.
Carried.
Right. Right, notice of motions for the subsequent meeting. Inquiries. Councillor Tierney has an inquiry.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And again, this is just, I don't want to say it's a belt and suspenders thing, but staff have been asked by Wesley Clover Park. They feel that there's new information. So I'll read the inquiry. And again, there's no decisions being made, but we're requesting staff to Wesley Clover Park was established in 2014 when the NCC granted Wesley Clover Foundation control of the operations of the former equestrian park at the municipal campground at 411 Corkstown Road. Over the last 8 years, Wesley Clover Park is focused on offering quality equestrian programming and a variety of music events on the property. WCP is now prepared to expand its facilities and increase sporting opportunities offered on this site. There has been considerable discussion on the eligibility of Wesley Clover Park as a municipal capital facility. Section 110 of the Municipal Act 2001 SOC 25 permits municipalities to enter into the agreement of the provision of municipal capital facilities. Section 110 of the Municipal Act 2001 also permits the council of the municipality to designate the lands with the classes of lands described in the Ontario Regulation 603/6 as MCF, that they may be exempt facilities from taxation or municipal school purposes. Wesley Clover Park has officially requested the City of Ottawa be designated as a municipal capital facility. A legal opinion provided by Wesley Clover Foundation has determined that the park satisfies the eligibility requirements under the Municipal Act 2001 for the city to classify the park as a municipal capital facility. In light of the legal opinion and now new information provided by Wesley Clover Park with respect to the expansion plans, can staff in the RCFS and the finance finalize the review of the WCP and requests to designate Wesley Clover Park as a municipal capital facility and share the rationale or outcome of their assessment with Finance and Economic Development Committee and Council before the next meeting of FEDCO. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. That direction now will come back. Other business, adjournment, carried.
Carried.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, June 28th. Everyone have a great day. Take care. Meeting adjourned.